I'm telling you this because maybe you didn't know, is because I'm not here to put anyone down. I'm here to bring everybody up. My point is two things. Two things, purpose and responsibility. I have a purpose. I didn't know I had this purpose, but many people in my background always knew that I was special. It was never about race. We had a good time in the 60s and the 70s. But for some reason, things come to you and you just have to pick up and do things about it. The responsibility is all of ours. It's not a minority and majority. We are all the majority. We're the majority. And I just want you to understand that someone said to me, a young designer, Prabal, said to me, who's going to do what you do when you're gone? And I could only think, since there's no one I could hand this baton to, I could only think, it's you. I'm handing it to all of you.
Hello, Bethann. Hi.
Hello.
Meeting you on Zoom. Hello. Well, that was a trip down to memory lane for you, I saw on your face, with all the pictures that passed by in your life. Can you hear me properly?
I can hear you. Yes, can you hear me properly?
Yes, I can hear you properly. Bethann, I cannot tell you how grateful I am to have you with us today to express everything that you have been doing throughout your life, and also from an early morning call in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for that. And I want to really properly introduce you to the people who are listening in, so bear with me, because it's my great honor and privilege to introduce to you a remarkable woman, Bethann Hardison, who's named among friends the wise owl and the fashion oracle, as she's a beacon for many designers and models in the international fashion world. Bethann is one of these people who seem to reincarnate several times within one life, as you see what she has been achieving throughout this lifetime. She became famous as a model between the 60s and 70s, being a muse to Bruce Weber, who at that time was a fellow model that became the renowned photographer. Later on, Bethann, together with Iman, Beverly Johnson, and Pat Cleveland, was part of the handful of beautiful models of color that roared in the 70s, changing the face of fashion, representing the Black is Beautiful movement. Bethann, you worked with a stellar group of designers, Oscar de la Renta, Calvin, Issey Miyake, Ungaro, to name just a few, and the list goes on and on and on. From being a model, you became an agent, advocating for diversity in the industry. You founded a modeling and management agency by your own name, and later on in life, in 1988, you embraced even more fully your activist heart by founding, together with Iman, the Black Girls Coalition, lending support to African American models. The lives keep coming in this one life. You set out to be an executive producer for TV. You became a Vogue Italia editor-at-large, working with the late and tremendously wonderful Franca Sozzani. With her, you worked amongst all on the famous Black issue. And currently, you are on the board of the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers America, and you are a Gucci executive advisor for global equity and cultural engagement. You rightfully so have been giving countless awards for your lifetime achievements that you all accept ever so humbly. Bethann, within all of this tremendously full, engaged life, what was your first notion when you were stepping out to become what we call now a fashion activist?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, but first, before I say that, I want to tell you how wonderful it was to watch my pictorial life go before me and then just hear the speech from the CFDA. I've never even heard it before. That's good. Yeah, it was amazing. No, it was really nice that you put that on. I never thought of myself as being an activist, surely. I mean, I know at times I'm an activist, and other times I will always remain an advocate. So I never had the thought, oh, I'm going to be this activist. You just sort of do certain things because you have conversations, you speak up to others, you recognize something that someone said or did that didn't seem proper, maybe be the word. and you just speak on it. It's something that it's nothing that you sort of like put on as a helmet. You know, it's just something that comes to you, and then you start to do things, and then other people say, "Oh, look what you're doing. This is activism, or this is that." It's not something that I sort of like thought to myself, "I'm going to be this." No, never.
No, it's just what you need to do. It's what you said. It's purpose and responsibility.
Yeah.
Where did this first notion of wanting to make a change for you start, and taking out this responsibility?
It only happens when someone you notice keeps, like when I had the model agency. That's a perfect time frame for me. For it was from '84 to properly to 1996. Okay, so 1984 to 1996. With things you would notice, you know, I had a white model agency, which gave me great privilege, because having a white model agency, being a Black owner,
Yes.
and someone who's more conscious and being raised by, you know, someone who really made me very aware of global actions and lack of actions.
Yes.
You would notice things if a designer, you know, was so excited because they all knew me, loved me, respected me. And when the fashion model disappeared, which was mostly the runway girl, when she disappeared and it was only print girls, you didn't have many girls that you could put on the runway, because the print girls weren't they're mostly white. So you could easily have a conversation with someone.
Yes.
You know, you said, well, you know, if you want me to find you a great Black girl, because me being of color, me having great taste, they loved everybody I had, whether it be white, Black, Asian, Latin. So you could see the ratio difference. When they would say, I'd say, well, how many girls are you using? They say 25. I say, well, you know, you want me to find you one great Black girl. And then I would show them how the ratio difference sounded racist, not that they were. And then if Brides Magazine, I had one girl who worked in Brides Magazine all the time. She was a brunette. Mm-hmm. And I would just sometimes ask the editor, you know that Blacks and Latins and Asians get married too. They never had anyone of any other color in the magazine. So, you know, you just raise these points, you ask people questions, and it makes them think.
Yes.
You know, just an opportunity to think about what they had never thought about before.
It's dialogue. It's the constant dialogue that you,
yes,
as a Black owner of a model agency with a lot of white girls, you got to bridge a lot.
Yes, exactly true.
But I read something really special in you. You were once the youngest correction officer appointed to a New York State prison.
Jesus Christ, you should have never read that. Where? Can you tell me so I can go pick them all up and destroy them? Jesus.
You know?
You really did your research, because that's awful. Yes, it's true, but nobody, I keep that as under lock and key, but that's true.
I just wondered how you got that job and what your experience, if it laid a fundament for your purpose in life later on.
No, I think, it's interesting you say that. No, when I was a kid, I always wanted to get, as I got older, as a kid, still young, under 18, I thought I wanted to work in law. I wanted to work in some kind of way. I knew I wasn't going to go to law school, but I wanted some kind of way work in law. My father would always tell me, because I could debate anything, I was on a debating team in high school, I should be a lawyer. But what wound up happening is that I saw a film when I was a kid called The Snake Pit, and it was about a correction prison for women.
Yes.
And I don't know, that horror film in a way, but it stayed on my mind. It allowed me to believe that I could maybe be a correction officer. So I had a boyfriend at the time whose mother was a correction officer. And I just I asked her about it, and I went and I put in an application, because in those young years, you're trying to find a job, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, you're just trying to work.
Yeah. So
I put an application, and I was too young to be appointed. But then when I was old enough, they appointed me. And I was the youngest.
How old were you?
You had to be 21. I applied to put the application in when I was 19 or 20. So you had to be 21. And so in the end of the day, yes, I wound up doing this. But what I think, if you ask me the foundation, could that have been, as a kid, I did so many independent things. I think I just had the strength to go and try and do that. But it was not an easy road. They had me, because I was so young, in the reformatory, where all the younger inmates were. Yeah. But there'd been one time, eventually, they put me at night in the prison, where women screamed all night, about their dues. And I just knew I can't do this anymore. So I got out, and I got a job in the garment business.
That was the shift for you. And
yes.
And also you did something else that I loved. You were working at the department store, the Federated, and then you actually said to them, if you really want a great show, you'll have me in it. And basically you advocated for yourself, as you would do later for countless others.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I was working for Ruth Manchester. I had a junior dress company, and I had to take the samples over to the Federated store with Bernie Ozer. At the time, he was the head of junior dresses and sportswear, and he always liked to put on a big kind of Broadway show. He loved Broadway, so he made his buyers be entertained at the same time, but see what was being manufactured. And I heard what he was doing and saw, what I was waiting to give him my clothes, and I did ask him if I had the courage, because I was also had been a child tap dancer, and I was quite well known as a child tap dancer. So I just wanted to get back on stage. The idea he was doing something on stage, I didn't know anything about modeling. So that was really the first time I actually modeled. By the time I got back to my office, he had told the owners of my company, I want that girl to come in. I want her to be in my show. And the owners of my company were such supporters of me. They were like, oh, you have to do it. Bernie wants you. I thought I had blown it, but it was great. It's just having, I don't know, after you live life long enough, you're still trying to figure it out, who you are and what you do and why you do what you do.
Yeah, you stepped it up from them. You went into, because it went really fast from there on. Then Bruce Weber, who was a former model, at that time fell in love with you as a muse, photographing you every weekend. And there you went, like flying off to all the big catwalks.
But that's exactly right. That was print that Willie Smith introduced me to Bruce Weber and had Bruce, asked Bruce to photograph me. And that was something Bruce and I did nicely. But I was never a print girl, so I was always just a runway model. So I was never, those few pictures that Bruce did of me that he didn't think was that great is still some of my best.
What I love also, if I look back at that period, you were already an icon of representation in that time, because you were very different. You were a very different beauty. You had this short cropped hair. You were standing out already as one of the few girls for your color of your skin. And at the same time, you were also fierce, because you went freely tap dancing on the catwalk, and therefore winning the whole Versailles battle by yourself.
That was, more tap dancing was like for Calvin Klein and other, like when we do things in, I guess during New York Fashion Week or things like that. But for Versailles, that was quite different. That was a whole nother story. That was a very special moment, and we were so serious, and it was so serious. And we were choreographed as well. Even if it was just paced, we weren't maybe doing dance steps, but we were choreographing, how we walked down and where. It was just the way I walked down at that time, because I also was an assistant to Stephen Burrows. So being at Versailles was quite unique in that sense, because I was his assistant, his design assistant and personal assistant, as well as I was a fashion model. So I had 3 designers that, brought me on. And it was very interesting in that sense, because they were counting on me. Like Halston kept saying, come on, Bethann. Every time we do rehearsals, I was just trying to pace the time until it was really ready. But when that time came, it was so much confusion along that journey of Versailles.
What kind of confusion?
Important to win, so that's the reason why my walk became so pertinent. It became so strong, and we did. I mean, that was one of the things that all the programs went up in the air. They stomped and stomped when I came down, but we were on the road to winning.
So out of the confusion, you decided to become even more fierce.
Yes. Well, it's almost like I had to help everyone, because there was so much dissension between everybody. But that's a great thing about Americans. They fight amongst each other until it's time to put on a show, and then they all come together, and that's what happened.
Yeah, for people who do not know about the Battle of Versailles, they can see it on Netflix currently, because you're sort of in it on the Halston movie. Did you see it already?
Yeah, but it's better to see. I don't know where you could see. Oh, there are 2 documentaries. The Halston series doesn't tell you anything. It tells you a little bit about Versailles because of him. But it's better to see the Battle of Versailles for Versailles 73, which is one documentary, and then the battle, which is done by M2M. Made to Measure. So there's 2 different documentaries. They can be seen. The documentaries are better to see.
I would like to make a big jump with you, Bethann,
Please.
because together with Iman and other models, you actually did this. Now I have to really recall the coalition,
Oh, the
Black Girls
Coalition.
Coalition. Tell us a bit more about the purpose, why you started the Black Girls Coalition, and who was in it, and what were you going for?
Well, see, it gets a little confused along the way in history because people presume that it was because of the issues of race. It wasn't. It was started because I was so impressed that so many girls of color were coming out and being represented, because it was the first time ever in our history that you saw that many girls working print-wise. That they weren't, because the runway, the whole thing, that was over. That division of fashion modeling had been, completely shut down.
Yeah, we're talking
So
1988, huh? We're talking
this was-
1988, yeah.
Yeah, when the coalition had started, in the 70s is when the runway model had just sort of ended. But short around in the 80s, there were so many girls working. I was so impressed and I was so proud of it. And I give a lot of credit to Regis Panez for Elle magazine, who really came to put American Elle together, and he did from France. And it started to help support the fashion model of color, the beauties that when he was putting them on covers and the magazines. And of course, it sort of like competed with Condé Nast and also with Hearst. So Bazaar and Vogue had to do. But I was so impressed with the girls and seeing them. And even though my model agency couldn't take but so many girls, and it wasn't girls at my model agency, maybe just a couple, like Veronica Webb, Rashumba, Fina. Those are a few girls that was part of it from my agency, but there was girls at different agencies. And my purpose at the time was to sort of like celebrate them and let them know that they should be celebrated, because they have no idea. They're just young to it. This has never happened in the history of time. So I was at dinner with Iman, and I just basically, she was a little moaning about a film she was to get. And I came up with an idea, and she always liked my ideas. I said, listen, I got an idea. Let's do a big like celebration of the girls of color and do like a ball. And I just want to benefit. I wanted to benefit homelessness, because homelessness was running rapid in New York at that time. And I could help to support homeless children who were double victimized from their parents losing the opportunity to have housing. So we used that as a way to raise consciousness in our industry. It was raised consciousness about what was going on in our city, homelessness, but also at the same time celebrate the girl and let people see her. And so it was so funny. I never thought success would be so big. It was such a huge success. The people came out. I mean, everyone from Robert De Niro to Michael Jordan. I mean, there was so many. Like, I was shocked at the people who showed up. The men, the women. It was such a big, wonderful thing. We did it at MK. And then as we grew a little, I noticed that also the girl that in commercial advertising, Blacks were not being reflected in commercial advertising. And also the girls who were in it were, Iman and Naomi Campbell, Rashumba, as I said, Veronica Webb, Fina, Cynthia Bailey. Oh my goodness, there were like 20 of us.
Yeah, the contradiction was huge at that time also. Like, if you would, on one hand, there was all these wonderful girls of colors who came out, but at the same time, if you looked at advertising, you would see that people of color were actually represented always in a very stigmatized way. So there was this huge discrepancy. And recently, if you see what's happening nowadays, that like 54, 55% in 2021 is actually representing in campaigns girls and men and women of color, which is like incredible. In
the opposite perspective.
Finally.
Yes. Well, in the commercial advertising at the time, it was really commercial advertising. It wasn't fashion. I was going after, advertising agencies. But you're right about that. Consistently we've gone through peaks and valleys when it comes down to helping people be, I guess you say, stable at representation. And then when the industry changed, you have to know things happen in our industry that changes things. So outside people like stylists and casting directors started working with designers. That never happened before. Designers only represented, they had their own crew, their own team, their assistants that represented the models and had models come and choose models. Now we started having outside people who came from other countries too, editors, everyone. And when the wall went down in, say, Eastern Europe, then they started being able to go into Eastern Europe and scout models. Yeah. This was a great change because that had never happened before.
Yeah.
And then during that time frame too, because we already had the success of the supermodel and, you know, the integration of models, blacks and whites, what wound up happening, having so many of those European girls being scouted, someone like Amicia Prada, that was one of the first things that you saw that she did, she made the linear of the girls just very much that body alignment and completely different than what we had been seeing. So it was, and they all looked pretty much alike. Their hair was tied in a bun. They weren't glamorous looking girls. They weren't memorable girls, but they were all Caucasian. And they basically, you were noticing the clothes more than you were noticing the girl. That's the thing that started. And once that happened, it became a trend. And all of a sudden,
is it true, Bethann, that you at that stage wrote letters to all the big fashion houses saying, guys, I understand that you want to choose a certain look, but the end result in the end, that the intent is not racism, but the end result is leading up to racism. Did you write them personally?
Yes, I wrote that personally. But by that time, we had gone through really lots of So I wrote that in 2013 because you tried to, you know, you could see what was happening and nobody was flipping, you know, wasn't changing. It was just consistently going down that road. And I did. I wrote that letter and it was we had created like a diversity coalition where I had many people in the industry, whites, blacks, models, editors, casting directors, makeup, hair, glamour. That was all part of this group that I was talking to. And the great thing about it is that they were in the industry. They could see if I didn't travel, they could tell me what was going on. So I was just the front of the band, so to speak. You know, I was the one who could speak out. I had nothing to lose. I would never identify anyone that belonged to the coalition because they all worked in the industry. Yeah. It was more important to make a point. And so I wrote that note. I sent it to two guys that are in the coalition that I wanted their opinion about it.
But then how comes that you felt you had nothing to lose and others did?
Because I don't work for anybody in fashion.
Well, you work with Gucci.
Yeah, but that's 2019. Yeah. That was what I wrote that note. That was 2013.
That was a result.
I never let anything that, you know, obviously, because I had a model agency before. I was working independent. I mean, I was still representing Tyson. These people have jobs. I don't have jobs. I may work and talk and, you know, but I'm also that person that everybody knows and respects and have been around a long time. And I'm not coming at people to sort of like accuse anyone of anything. I'm just trying to always open their eyes to a fact. So it makes a little bit difference.
Yeah, you're living up to, you're taking that responsibility that is in front of you. You're actually acting upon it. Yes. But may I make a big jump in time right now? Because we're in extraordinary times where post-Me Too and sort of in the end and midst of Black Lives Matters, we're seeing in our zeitgeist a tremendous call for change that seems to set in for good, for real. How do you look at what is happening currently? Do you think this call for change will definitely become the new normal?
I'm kind of positive about it all. Because I've seen enough decades of things, how things happen and how things change. I think that with all that's going on, I think with the industry, the retailers, the corporations, I think even outside of fashion, I think there is definitely a shift. And I think the shift is going to be permanent. I think that, you know, you get an opportunity to see everyone's not going to win. That gets an opportunity right now because everyone's not everlasting. But there's going to be everlasting change because there's going to be some that has been given an opportunity and it's going to prove that those people deserved it. Yeah. So it gives us a much better chance. You know, they can open up the floodgates, let the flood go right through. But when they close it, there'll still be water. They say there'll still be water that's going to be showing that, you know, it was worth the right to do it, because it really does give us an opportunity to see who's out there. And that's a great thing. I think that it's going to show that there are certain fashion designers that you would have never known of before, that is going to show you who they are. The eyes are more wide open. Retailers are not going to hurt themselves just bringing anyone into their stores, but they're definitely going to give a more designers opportunity because they never heard of them before. And those who are meant to make it are going to make it by businesses. And I think that's the change. There's a lot of corporate jobs that are going to be given to people, that women especially, that are going to do exceptionally well. And that's what is going to remain, because once they got the opportunity, they would have never maybe gotten the opportunity if it wasn't for the movement. And the movement helped to change things.
Yes.
And I think there will be some permanent changes.
You said something beautiful about change in our call that we had before. You said, Angelique, everybody's talking about change, but I think in the end it's more motion. It's a constant motion, right? We're in times that evolve always, and change doesn't come from one second to the other, but it's a proactive thing, this motion. How do you do that in your life, and how you see people around you living this constant motion? Where does it come from?
Interesting. I think constant motion. Yeah, I think that there's an energy that with life itself, there are things that just need addressing. It's like a garden. You sometimes have to go out and prune the garden. You've got to really basically go out there and water it, keep it watered, keep it seeded. You have to sort of weed the garden, So those are things I think that happens in our industry. I think that's what's happening now. We'll see. I mean, surely I have my foot on the clutch when it comes down to the fashion model as well as the designer. But I don't want it to get lost where we don't have the opportunity, that we don't continue to integrate. I don't want it ever to be where we're just constantly thinking about, at least I'm not. I see where there's a heaviness in one area, I want to always rebalance it. So for me, I'm still looking for integration. I'm not looking for an all black anything. I'm looking for people to sort of be conscious of the fact that these people, everyone has talents. Everyone who has the talent, not everyone has talent. Everyone who has the talent has the right to be seen. And you see who's going to stick to the top, because our business doesn't allow you to sort of like just win forever. But sometimes some great people have been around and they just are not, you never even heard of them anymore. No one even knows who they are, but they were great at their moment in time.
Bethann, you're saying I'm not advocating basically for all black everything, but when you did together with Franca Sozzani, and I did only recently realize that you played such a big part in creating the incredibly beautiful black issue. That was a real game changer statement. Can you tell us about how it came to see life?
Yes, that was, during that same time when I was making a conscious effort about what was going on in our industry, because the casting directors and stylists were telling the model agencies, no blacks, no ethnics. And they would say that before they would see models for the season. These are things that, you just have to end. So once I put that to the press, and that came out in a town hall meeting, Franca was also at the same time beginning to see what was going on with all the things I was doing. And then she just basically knew she wanted to do an all black issue, because in her mind, she knew that blacks would sell, but she was hearing all the time, they don't sell. That's the reason why people don't want to invest too much in an image on the cover or inside too much. And she didn't believe it. So she went ahead and did an issue where she devoted to all blacks with Stephen Meisel, all black models. The advertising remains as it is, because the advertisers, it's an Italian magazine, the advertisers remain the same, but the editorial was all of color. So she reached out to me to let me know she was going to do this. I was already doing, town hall meetings and all. And she wanted me to come in as an editor and to really actually do 10 pages of new brand new girls, because she was already doing the Girls Who Were Known. I did that with her and me and her son. We did that. That was a wonderful day.
Don't you think it's remarkable?
And then she did a whole story on me at the back of the magazine, telling my story. Yeah, that was a wonderful thing. And then, of course, what the success and the history of that is that it sold out 3 times.
Yeah. The only issue that was reprinted that often and sold out that often. So that's for how fashion can be total game changing, right? if you
That's
make a
right.
statement with fashion as a medium. And personally, I think right now, Edward Enninful is bringing the legacy of Franca Sozzani to even different level, showing us with British Vogue that diversity and equal representation in fashion is definitely the new normal. You know, he's just pushing it out there. But how do we find a balance? Because you also see a lot of marketing campaigns that become all like Benetton campaigns. And then my fashion heart goes out there like, this is also not the way to go. You know, we have to find a balance. We have to make it work based on authenticity. How do you look at that?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. I think that, it's so important to continue to do a certain integration, because what my fear is that if it continues to go in one direction hard, like these brands who've now finally see that Blacks can wear clothes in the winter, and that they're finally putting on very beautiful, African kids, who are from the continent of Africa, African models and all. And, I just want them to not fall backwards, because there will be such a trend of going in that direction that then all of a sudden there'll be like, enough of that. Yeah. And my whole thing is, if you can, just to keep it integrated, so we don't choke on what you're choosing to do so frequently, or they themselves don't choke on what they feel like they've done, because that becomes their trend, their moment, and they become so passionate about one thing that they leave out the other. And that is something that I hope doesn't happen, but I can only imagine will.
You can only imagine will. Why?
Because I think that what happens with industries is that when you do all or nothing, you get all or nothing until you wear out, and then you say, oh, well, okay, I did that. And then you change and you want to see something different, especially creative people. So I hope that they can maintain the consciousness of maintaining the ethnic, which is the Black, the Asian, the dark Latino, as well as maybe also, as they integrate continually the white girl and boy in their advertising and on their runway, that to not just sort of drop those who have color that you've integrated. Don't think of it as a trend. Just always remember, it's part of our industry, it's part of our world, it's part of our society, and you help to reflect what is norm, what should be norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You meaning the designer, you meaning the advertiser, you meaning the editor, you meaning the casting director. You have to help society be as modern as possible.
Yeah,
that's our responsibility.
That's our responsibility, and it's coming from a deep fashion consciousness, right? Or personal consciousness.
Better than that. It's coming from a consciousness, a human consciousness. Fashion is just a joke to me sometimes. So I don't want to give it to. It's really truly, it's coming from a human consciousness. And the human consciousness is what really makes a difference. If you want to go and label on fashion, then you might get pulled by the nose and go do what the other guy is doing. And he might be going down a rabbit hole. What we need to do is be conscious as human beings.
Bethann, we're both on other sides of the globes. I'm in Amsterdam, 6 o'clock, you're 9 o'clock in LA. But I need to discuss with you a very sensitive subject. Like, I feel that maybe the American situation is different than the European situation, but in the Netherlands, for example, we have Zwarte Piet. That's a huge discussion. Don't know if you've heard about it. And also, we come in Europe from a lot of colonization, and currently decolonization is a big, big topic. But at the same time, talking to students and teachers, there's at this moment the need for guidance in how to be culture appropriate. There's really a need for guidance, because we need to figure out, without missing the possibility of bridging and reaching each other, how to move with this. Because, and as an example, a wonderful and really most decent inclusive woman in the Netherlands became accused of racism recently online, rather harshly attacked because she braided her hair. And then you see people really need to learn and grow, reflect.
Be clear what you're saying. Was it a Caucasian woman who braided her hair?
It was a Dutch woman who braided her hair. Yeah. And you see that we need to understand better and learn and grow by advice how to be responsible in that, or grow together. Could you give us an advice in how this delicate understanding of culture appropriateness is, because it's a thing?
Yeah, no, it's very hard. It's what would you say? It's what?
It's a big topic.
Yes. Yeah, it's very big for me too. That's something Frank and I used to talk about often. And they would get accused. Even the magazine would get accused of if they did something creative, if they put big hoops in a white girl's ear, or braid her hair the same, equal to the same. I have a hard time with a appropriation because I'm old school. I'm from a whole nother generation. I'm not as thin-skinned as the generation that now, is on social media and watches and feels very being taken advantage of with their culture. So I don't find it difficult for me, but I see the difficult it is for others, and they want people to give credit. I hear that more than anything else. They want credit to be given. If you're going to put your hair in braids, you should. If you're going to, they say misappropriate, then you should definitely be appropriate by actually acknowledging why and where you're getting that from. I don't know why that makes a difference, but for them, that makes a difference. If Marc Jacobs has a fashion show and he puts a certain braiding in or does certain things to reflect and to give appreciation to hip hop, people get upset because they don't know what the origin. They're not sitting in the show. They're not reading the program. He gives credit, but it becomes a thing where they become so precious about it. And it is a very sensitive subject because I don't know me going around and saying what I say is going to change too much of it or make younger people or people of color feel better about it. But it is a very sensitive thing. And I think that you can hardly do much now. And that's a sad thing for fashion designers. They have to be so careful right now. And it's, I don't come from that time where we had to do all of that. You were inspired by other cultures. You were inspired by other regions of the world, and you
honoring them
lent it to your collections, and that was what you did because that's what enjoying cultures are, to be able to reflect and to be inspired by and to sort of to show what you're doing for where it came from, but basically getting an opportunity to show it. And for some nowadays, it's got to be like you're accused right away of that not being appropriate. You cannot do that. You cannot be relaxed with fashion like that. You cannot be relaxed with design right now. You have to be checking, have your people in your company check all the time if this is right or this is wrong, because you'll be accused of something. And then if they cancel, oh my God, cancel culture is serious. Yeah. So it's like, it's very difficult in that way. And I don't know what one can do other than constantly communicating. And I don't know, you're going to always have someone who's mad. So you got to forget that. You just want to try and see if you can reach the reasonable majority, because there's always going to be someone who's just going to be, because all you need is one person on social media being angry. Yeah. And if it catches like wildfire, and then it just goes, and it's hard to stop it.
Yeah, you say that the councils, because you're in the Gucci Changemakers Council. It's my last question to you, because then we're going to go on to a Q&A. And I love what Gucci is doing with fashion for this broad cultural change. And I'm in awe of the impact also that the Gucci campaigns have in showing really avant la lettre all the zeitgeist of now. Representation in all layers of society, shapes, form, ages, genders. They're all highlighted on Gucci's pedestal in the "We are all different but all one" message. Can you tell me why you think Gucci is truly exemplary?
Oh, well, no, I mean, look, I'm a fan, it's true. I think it's because of the fact that it's really truly in the DNA of the people who are in the company, the concern for others, that you see it. I mean, they're concerned with disability now. Those who are disabled should be hired, where they can hire them, where they can place them, where they basically can be useful at the same time and be employed. I mean, from everything that you think of a conscious effort, anyone that brings anything to Gucci in that sense, they're interested in being people who bridge any gap. And I love that. And it was way before anyone wants to accuse them of anything that they thought that they did allegedly wrong. They've always been in the game since Alessandro and Marco Bizzarri has been at that company working together. They've always allowed the people who are around them are really those who really care. And that's what's important about a company. You can always hire an officer, a DE&I officer to come in and sort of help to try to help the company find its way. But if the company's not about it, that's going to be a long journey. And one thing I love about the Gucci situation and my relationship and seeing what I've witnessed with Gucci is that the people in the company are about that. So there's no need for a D&I. The company has to be a D&I. It has to be in their DNA, the D&I. You know, I mean, that's what it really has to be. That's why I said I'm glad I saw you had me, showing me when I was speaking at the CFDA, accepting my award, the Founders Award, is because of the fact I didn't remember saying that, but that's exactly right. Who am I going to hand the baton to? All of you. And that's exactly what should happen in a company. A company should have its foundation in diversity, inclusion, acceptance, and not be shy. Recognize that the world is full of differences. And how do we embrace those differences so we can be a modern society? What do we do about, what the earth is changing? We're responsible for its change. We have to do something about it. We have to sort of stop really ruining our environment. These are things that people have to be conscious of. And if they're conscious of it, they will do something about it. And that takes leadership. It doesn't start just with the little guy in the back or the typewriter. That may be one thing, but it has to take the leader of a company. It has to take a leadership in every department that has to feel that way. And I'm just lucky to see and witness at this stage of my life that I'm associated to a company that basically does that. That the people you sit and talk to, you listen to, they're interested in being better, to doing the right thing and doing it, not just talking it. It's easy to be on social media, blah, 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 blah. It's easy to write notes or say something, but when you see it actually actuated in a company, it's inspiring, especially for someone like me. I do things naturally. I don't have a serious, huge band, like a band behind me. I'm the front of it and I just do what I do. But when you see a large company that's not so large this was something I learned in executives, the company is large because of its landmark and its imprint. I said footprint in the world because there's so many stores. So that makes the company seem so large.
Yeah.
But within it, it's just really who actually runs a company. It's a small amount of people comparatively.
And Bethann, I can so relate to what you're saying because you've been working like a lifetime to come to this point, relentlessly. And I cannot thank you enough for this beautiful energy that you're giving to us with this interview from my heart. Thank you. But I'm seeing you in 2 minutes for a Q&A with the beautiful Stephanie and other designers also on the table for a Q&A with you to follow up on this conversation. Thank you so much. See you in a bit.
Thank you so much. All right, dear. Thank you.
Thank you.